You guys will never believe what happened. I just turned 18 last week and I'm living in this cozy, historic neighborhood in a small university town, chasing my dream of becoming a poet who captures the heart of everyday moments. There's this guy, Henry, the retired literature professor across the street, with this warm, magnetic vibe, think silver hair, thoughtful hazel eyes that seem to read you like a book, and a voice that could make Shakespeare sound like a love letter. I've always borrowed his shirts just for comfort after late night chats about poetry. Tonight, I wore one on purpose. I showed up at his house after dark, claiming I forgot to return something, but when he opened the door, my plan unfolded, and let's just say it wasn't about returning anything at all. Want to know how it went down? Keep watching, because this story is all about one moment that burns brighter than the town's streetlights. Like and subscribe for more. Sarah's 18th birthday, just 9 days ago, had felt like the first stanza of a poem, her new adulthood, a blank page ready for bold lines. The historic neighborhood of Elmwood, with its gaslit streetlights and ivy-clad townhouses, was her canvas for her freshman year. Her rented attic apartment, a cluttered haven of notebooks, poetry anthologies, and the faint scent of jasmine drifting through a cracked window. Her latest poem, a meditation on fleeting moments, spulsed with her restless energy, its verses sharp and vivid, mirroring the daring stirring in her heart since turning 18. That milestone had ignited a fearless spark, a desire to push boundaries and test the truths she sensed but couldn't name. Lately, her thoughts kept drifting to Henry, the retired literature professor across the street, whose reserved warmth had become a quiet obsession she couldn't shake. At 65, Henry was a former scholar whose thoughtful charm had caught her eye since she moved into Elmwood 6 months ago. His silver hair was neatly swept back. His hazel eyes carried the depth of years analyzing sonnets, and his hands, steady from turning countless pages, moved with a quiet. His nice work, Sarah, after reading one of her poems, paired with a restrained smile, had left her craving more, a lingering glance, a hint of something deeper. She'd told herself it was just admiration for a neighbor who'd lent her books, who'd shared stories of poets over tea on his porch. But her just-turned-18 boldness fueled a plan, one she'd woven carefully as she slipped into his oversized flannel shirt that evening, the fabric soft and familiar against her skin, and headed to his door under the guise of returning a forgotten book. The evening was cool, Elmwood hushed except for the rustle of leaves under the streetlights and the distant hum of a passing car, the air thick with the scent of autumn and wood smoke. Sarah had been scribbling in her notebook, the shirt Henry's, borrowed after a late-night poetry discussion, hanging loosely, brushing her thighs, when she decided to act. She grabbed a book she'd forgotten to return, a worn copy of Dickinson he'd lent her, and crossed the street to his townhouse, its windows glowing warmly against the night. Her heart pounded with a mix of nerves and her newfound daring as she knocked, the shirt deliberately unbuttoned just enough, her plan humming like a poem taking shape. Henry opened the door, his sweater slightly rumpled, his smile polite but curious, his hazel eyes catching hers in the soft light of his porch lamp. "Sarah," he said, his voice a low, warm hum, like a professor greeting a favorite student. "Didn't expect you this late. Everything all right?" She smiled, leaning against the doorframe, casual but controlled, the shirt loose and teasing. "Everything's fine," she said, her voice light but charged, holding up the book. "I forgot to return this. Figured I'd bring it by. Got a minute?" Her hazel eyes glinted with invitation, her just-turned decent confidence pushing her forward as she stepped inside when he gestured her in. He hesitated, his gaze flickering over her, lingering a moment on the shirt before nodding, closing the door behind her. "A minute," he said, his smile cautious but softening, like a scholar intrigued by a new text. Coffee or tea, since it's late? The living room was a cozy sanctuary, its walls lined with bookshelves stuffed with poetry collections, literary journals, and faded manuscripts. A leather armchair sat by a wide window overlooking the street, the glass catching the golden glow of the streetlights. A record player spun a soft classical piece Chopin, gentle and haunting, its notes weaving through the air like a quiet pulse, mingling with the scent of old books, chamomile tea, and a trace of Henry's cologne, something warm, like sandalwood. They settled on the couch, the book placed on a low table between them, mugs of tea steaming nearby, the shirt's hem brushing Sarah's thighs as she tucked one leg under her. The classical music crackled softly, its melody wrapping the room in a warm glow, the streetlights casting golden flecks across the hardwood floor. Their conversation started like the Dickinson poems, her latest poetry draft, but Sarah's mind drifted to flashes of their past interactions. Henry's hand brushing hers as he handed her a book during a porch chat. His laugh when she'd misquoted Frost in a late-night discussion, the way he'd lingered to read her poem, his voice soft as he'd said, "You've got..." Each memory carried a spark she'd tried to dismiss, blaming his reserve on academic distance. But now, sitting close, the air felt charged, like a verse waiting to be spoken. The talk turned personal, the classical notes fading to a soft hum as they sipped their tea, its herbal warmth lingering on her lips. Sarah shared her passion for poetry, how it felt like capturing a heartbeat in words. "It's like I'm chasing moments that slip away," she said, her voice soft but steady, her fingers tracing the edge of her mug. "I want my poems to make people feel alive. Does that sound too big?" Her eyes met his, searching for a crack in his reserved facade, her just-turned-18 boldness stirring under his thoughtful gaze. Henry nodded, his hands resting on his knees, close enough that she could feel their warmth, a quiet strength. "Not too big," he said, his voice low, resonant, like a professor reading a cherished line. "Your poems have that fire, Sarah. I saw it in that piece you showed Morag, but alive. It's hard to look away from." His words were careful, but a new weight lingered in them, a hesitation that made her pulse quicken, her plan humming louder. She leaned forward, the couch creaking softly, the shirt shifting slightly, the scent of tea mingling with the room's warmth. "Hard to look away?" she teased, her voice playful but edged with daring, her hazel eyes locking on his. "That's a big compliment from the guy who's always so proper. You sure you're not just being nice?" Her just-turned-to-teen confidence pushed her to test the boundaries. The living room shrinking to just the two of them, the classical melody, a soft heartbeat in the background. He chuckled, setting his mug on the table, his eyes holding hers a moment longer than usual, a flicker of something unguarded in his gaze. "I'm not that nice," he said, his voice warm but tinged with a quiet intensity like a scholar revealing a hidden verse. "You're not just the neighbor across the street, Sarah. You've got something real." The Chopin piece swelled softly, the air heavy with the scent of books and the weight of their moment, the streetlights outside casting a golden glow. Sarah's mind raced, replaying more moments. The first time Henry had lent her a book, his nod curt but his eyes lingering. A rainy afternoon, when he'd shared a story about a poet's lost love, his voice weaving warmth as she listened. The quiet moment when he'd read her poem, his hand brushing hers as he'd said, "This is you, Sarah. All of you." Each memory tightened the thread between them, pulling her closer to the edge of her plan, her heart pounding with the possibility that his reserve was hiding something more. "Hey guys," Sarah said, her voice bright but laced with mischief. As if speaking to her imaginary audience, her eyes glinting as she leaned back, breaking the tension for a moment. "We're about to get into this spicy portion of the story, so please don't forget to like and subscribe." She grinned, the words a playful nod to her daring, but her heart pounded as she shifted, leaning against the couch's armrest, casual but deliberate. The oversized shirt slipped from one shoulder, slow and intentional, the fabric brushing her skin as it fell, revealing the curve of her collarbone. Henry froze mid-sentence, his eyes catching the movement, his voice trailing off as he stared, the air between them warming. Sarah didn't fix it, didn't apologize, her gaze steady, bold, holding his with a quiet challenge. "I just turned 18, she said, her voice soft but pointed, her hazel eyes unwavering. "Is that a problem?" The moment held, the silence electric, the classical music a distant hum as the room narrowed to just them, the couch, the table, the golden glow of the streetlights. Her heartbeat quickened, her breath steady but charged, her just turned Deady and boldness carrying her forward. She'd planned this, worn the shirt on purpose, but now, with his eyes locked on hers, the air felt alive like a poem finding its rhythm. Henry's gaze softened, a slow smile tugging at his lips, his voice low, strained but warm. "No problem," he said, his eyes flickering to the slipped shirt before returning to hers, a spark of something unguarded breaking through. "But you're playing a dangerous game, Sarah. That shirt, this visit, it's not about the book, is it?" Her smile widened, her heart soaring, the tension a living thing between them. "Maybe not," she admitted, her voice teasing but honest. Leaning closer, the shirt still askew, the fabric brushing her skin like a whispered secret. "Maybe I wanted to see what you'd do if I stopped pretending." Her eyes locked on his, the classical notes swelling like a cue, her plan unfolding in the charged silence. He laughed, a low, warm sound, his hand resting on the couch, close enough to feel its warmth, his fingers brushing her as the contact electric, sending a shiver through her like a pen striking paper. "Your trouble," he said, his voice rich with a mix of amusement and intensity, his hazel eyes twinkling with a warmth she hadn't seen before. "I've been trying to keep things proper, Sarah. You just turned 18 and you walk in here wearing my shirt like that and I'm supposed to stay composed? You're making it impossible." Her breath caught, the living room shrinking further, the streetlights framing them like a final act. Her friend Mia's warning echoed faintly. "He's so reserved, Sarah. Don't push him," but Mia was wrong. This wasn't pushing. This was truth, raw and electric. "Maybe I like making it impossible," she said, her voice soft but steady, her hand pressing lightly against his, the touch grounding her like a book's weight in her hands. "What do you want, Henry?" "Now that I'm here." He leaned back, his smile slow, his eyes tracing her face like he was reading a cherished poem. "I want to see where this goes," he said, his voice soft but deliberate, like a professor unveiling a hidden meaning. "You're bold, Sarah. Bolder than I was ready for. You show up here with that fire in your eyes and you're rewriting every rule I've got. I'm not sure I want to stop you." The air was thick with possibility, the classical music fading to a soft pulse, the room alive with their shared moment. Sarah's boldness pushed her forward, her heart racing with the thrill of her plan coming to life. "You're making it really hard to keep this." Neighborly, she teased, her voice a mix of playfulness and truth, her hazel eyes locked on his, her just turned. He chuckled, his hand shifting closer, his fingers curling slightly around hers, the touch warm and electric, like a spark in a quiet library. "Neighborly's overrated," he said, his voice low, rich, carrying the weight of their moment. "What do you want, Sarah? Now that the shirt's off your shoulder." Her heart pounded, the memory of his words echoing, the spark of his touch still warm on her skin. What did she want? Safety, simplicity, the polite chats they'd had? Or this him, the thrill, the fire he ignited in her heart? "I want to keep this," she said, her voice steady now, her eyes locked on his, her hand pressing against his, the contact grounding her like a poem's final line. "This feeling, this moment. You." His smile widened, his eyes twinkling with warmth and intensity, like a scholar seeing a verse come to life. "That's a bold choice," he said, his voice soft but charged, the classical music's final notes fading into silence, leaving only the hum of the street outside. "But I've always been a fan of bold." The living room was still, the streetlights outside a golden glow, reflecting their moment back to them. Henry's hand lingered near hers, the air alive with possibility, the book on the table forgotten like a prop left aside. "Good night, Sarah," he said, his voice soft but heavy, his eyes holding hers as he stood, offering her a way out but leaving the door wide open. "Good night, Henry," she said, her voice a mix of teasing and truth, with her heart pounding as she stood, the shirt still slipped off her shoulder. So the spark between them brighter than the town's streetlights. She stepped toward the door, her just-turned teen heart racing. The memory of his gaze, his touch, lingering like a poem she couldn't stop writing. She crossed the street back to her apartment, the night air cool, the neighborhood's rhythm soothing, the leaves rustling like applause. As she closed her door, she leaned against it, her heart ablaze with the thrill of what might come next, knowing her bold plan had turned a borrowed shirt into a spark, leaving only a daring new chapter, one fearless move at a time.